This workshop tonight is a joint venture between my office, MCBIB, the Biotechnology Career Services Office, the ACES Career Services Office, basically all of the offices that are working together to do the ACES Sciences Career Fair, which is on October 3rd, and you all should be there. And one of the things with our career fair is we really can't make it happen without our sponsors. And we are just so grateful for our corporate partners, some of which are here tonight. So they are actually going to be your expert panel tonight, so we don't have to talk. But I know that you guys will have questions. We do have some prepared questions that I'm going to sort of facilitate. But if you have questions at any point, please feel free to raise your hands, and I'll kind of call on you, and you can address your questions to any or all of the recruiters that are here. So tonight we are represented by Dow Agro and Abbvie, Rob, Ryan, and Katie, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, tell a little bit about sort of the areas that they recruit, their own personal sort of backgrounds, even a few blurbs about their companies, just sort of give you an introduction so you know who they are, and then I'll launch into the questions. But like I said, if you guys have questions, we're here for you, so we want to address the questions that you have. So if you guys want to just do a quick overview of who you are and so forth.
Sure. Well, my name is Ryan Messner, and I'm a sales manager for Dow AgroSciences, which is a crop protection seed biotechnology organization. It's about a $7 billion a year annual organization, owned by the Dow Chemical Company, which is about a $60 billion a year organization. We operate in 60-some plus countries worldwide, so we have offices all across the globe. My role and responsibility and recruiting responsibility is for our commercial business, so sales, account management, sales trainees, interns, and so forth. And the geography that I cover is Illinois and Wisconsin. And so across that area we have 13 sales representatives who call on retailers and farmers across the country or across the region, promoting the features and benefits of our brand. So I've been in this role for just about a year now. Prior to that, I've been in a number of different commercial roles within Dow AgroSciences across the U.S., some in Europe, and so forth. I started 10 years ago. I'm from a small little town in northern Indiana. I have a farming background. I went to a liberal arts college up near Chicago. I've been with Dow for just about 10 years. And like I said, I've actually switched roles about every 2 years. And so it's been an interesting organization to work for, because if you're interested in developing across your career, whether that's in new geographies, new types of businesses, interacting with different people, you have that opportunity as long as you ask for it and you perform for it.
So Ryan, what type of majors do you or degrees do you typically hire?
The degrees we typically go after are ag business, ag economics, marketing, finance, so school of business for our commercial roles. And we do take on folks from the sciences as well if they're interested in commercial opportunities.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Rob Cicchillo. I am a scientist at Dow AgroSciences, so I don't have to give the background on Dow AgroSciences, which is good because he knows much more about it than I do. But I'm a senior scientist. I'm a biochemist who I've been there for 5 years now in Indianapolis at the R&D facility. My training is in mechanistic enzyme work, biochemistry. I did my postdoc here. I spent 2.5 years in the chemistry and biochemistry department in Wilfred Vanderdonk's lab. As far as recruiting goes, we have recently shifted more of our research hires to more doctoral master's level, more upper degrees, more graduate level training, postgraduate training. And I would say that most of the more recent hires have all been PhDs, so across chemistry, pure chemistry, and in biotech.
I'm Katie Calavoda. I'm from Abbvie. I spent 9 years in Champaign. I did my undergrad in biochemistry, and then I got my PhD at the vet school in Vet Path Bio. I did undergraduate research with John Geralt, and my thesis research was with Eric Vimmer. I did gene regulation for my thesis research. Abbvie spun off from Abbott at the beginning of the year, and we're the pharma side of the business. So I am a principal pharmaceutical scientist. I am in the injectable drug product area, or basically anything that's not taken orally. The type of and I could go on about Abbvie. I mean, it's a drug company, basic pharma. Humira is the big seller. Lupron, Zemplar, other drugs, Cervanta. The type of backgrounds we're looking for: chemists, analytical chemists, biochemists, molecular biologists, virologists, very strong science backgrounds. At the career fair in 2 weeks, Abbvie will be there looking specifically for interns, as well as for rotational students who are graduating in May, I believe. And so both undergrad and grad work. I've seen a wide variety of hires, all from the PhD postdoc level down to undergrad level, and the best way to get in a direct hire out of undergrad is to get into the internship program. So.
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about the majors that you looked at. Could you also talk about just general skills, competencies, things that you look for in an interview, and maybe also how can students show you that they have those skills? Whoever wants to jump in first.
If you have a degree from the University of Illinois in chemical sciences, I'm going to assume some basic knowledge. I took some of the classes. Maybe I had some of your same professors. So when you, and maybe I'll get into resumes too, you'll have skill sets on your resumes and things and basic coursework. To me, you kind of want to differentiate what you did in a class and what you maybe did in a lab. And we were talking beforehand, you really need to own your resume. And if you have things on your resume you want to talk about, different, if you did some undergraduate research, if you did some sort of techniques, that gets more into, can you talk about what you did and really understand what you did? Did you just do it in a lab? Or did you actually take ownership of it and do you understand what you did? Because at the end of the day, we're going to want to hire people who we can just say, go into lab and do this, and not necessarily sit down and step by step talk you through it. Through the interview process, you kind of get a feel of if someone has competency or basically fluency in the science, but then also can balance that with the communication skills that would be needed for a team. So how'd I do?
Pretty good.
Okay.
I'll throw a couple other things in there. When we're interviewing for commercial roles, communication is critical. So the ability to communicate and establish a relationship, that's really what you're doing in an interview with the person that you're speaking to. So being able to deliver confidence, your experience, whether that's on campus, whether that's in internships, whether that's through actual practical work experience. We'll be looking for you to tie your actual work experience with what we're trying to accomplish as an organization. So that will take me to my second point, is research. You need to understand the organization that you're talking to. And that can be really difficult, especially in a career fair. But if you have the opportunity to interview with a company, they're taking and making an investment in you, and you're doing so in your time as well. So take the 30 minutes, take the 2 hours, whatever it is, to invest some time into understanding what that company's doing, and try to tie your skill sets, your strengths, your accomplishments in the past into what they're trying to accomplish as an organization. Because again, it's about the relationship. Once you make that connection, people are going to remember you. And that'll be the last thing, is you got to be rememberable. And there's good ways and there's bad ways. You show up with your shirt untucked and your hair messy, I'm probably going to remember you, but that's all I'm going to remember. You might be the best salesperson in the history of the University of Illinois, but I want to remember that your hair looked terrible, and I'm not going to want you in front of anybody. So make sure you are rememberable. Find ways to stand out from the crowd, whether that's how you present yourself, whether that's how you follow up, how you introduce yourself. You can do a little bit on a resume, but again, it's all about the relationship that you start in the interview, and you have an opportunity to take that to the next level. So find a way to make people remember you and remember what skills you have, why you stand out, and why you should be considered for a position or a secondary interview, things of that nature. So
I would say that, especially for Dow Agro, I mean, we're proliferating at exponential rates, and we're hiring across, to speak to the areas that we're hiring in the sciences at least, anywhere from molecular biologists, statisticians, bioinformatics. I mean, any area of science you can imagine, we're probably hiring in. We do hire some at bachelor level, those are more technical roles. So the further you can expand your resume, because it's become so competitive, the better off you are. Master's levels are especially in chemistry, are very well. It's a very good position to be in. But in terms of interviews and preparing, like we see resumes and we kind of take it for what it is. I mean, we could see everything you've done. We believe that these technical skills are acquired and you're proficient at them. And so we look at the behavioral things. So how well are you going to play a role in a team? How well do you interact with people? Your soft skills are some of the most important things you can have. So we want the smartest people at the same time, but we can tell that from where you come from. Illinois is a great example, one of the best schools in the physical sciences. So we could see all that, and then we're going to immediately go to how well you're going to interact with other people and create your network, create your credibility as a scientist.
I kind of have a little follow-up too. So what I've seen in career fairs, and even when I was in your shoes, I thought science, big company, and all there was is R&D. So a lot of times you'll come in and you'll say, I want a job in R&D. There's a lot more for a scientist at a diversified company than just R&D. You've got the development of new products. You've got this to support the products that are on market. You have to look at the chemicals or the things that you're purchasing to make those products. And all of those require technical skills. So if you come in saying, I want a job in R&D, you could potentially be cubbyholing you into a position, and maybe you're memorable and they're like, oh, we have this position, but it's on market support, and they said they really wanted R&D. If you really want a bunch top position, that's one thing. But if you're open to, basically just utilizing a scientific background, then you make that clear in an interview. Don't say you want to do discovery, you want to do more development work. I mean, that to me, that was my biggest misunderstanding with companies too, that science stopped in R&D, and that's just not true.
And that, just to extend on that quickly, one of the first things that I was asked, and coming in with postdoctoral experience, was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? At my interview, that was asked of me. And that means to me either managerial positions, a scientist manager, or in some other fashion, do I plan on leading a team, essentially a PI in an industry setting? And those things are, as Ryan said, we're investing in a career. We're not investing in a 5-year. And you hear about people jumping around in industry, and that does happen, and it happens frequently. But when Dow AgroSciences hires a scientist, we're hiring you for your career. That's our goal.
I think I'll add one thing. Sure. And this gets missed all the time in interviews, and at least from a selling perspective, it's the most important part of the entire selling process. And whether you're in sciences or supply chain or finance, or I don't care what your background is, every interview is a sales opportunity. That's probably the most important one you're going to have throughout your career, because somebody's got to buy you. And it's the close. It's asking for the order, it's asking for the job, it's asking for the next interview. That gets missed time and time again. And there are certain interviewers who, if you don't have that skill or that technique or maybe that courage in some cases to ask for it, you won't even be considered moving forward. So that's one way that I see people stand out, especially in a commercial part of the world, is asking for the job, telling them, I want to be a part of your team. Here's why. Most important job in an interview. Can I ask a question to the audience?
Of course.
What is the most important job when you go into an interview? What's your primary goal?
To sell yourself.
Okay, anybody else?
Find out if I want to work with this company.
Okay, anybody else? All great answers. I would challenge you, your primary job, whether you're just considering this company, is to get the job. Get the job. I don't care if you're going to interview at Enterprise Rent-A-Car or GlaxoSmithKline or Dow AgroSciences. Get the job. Does anybody know why? Why does that make sense? It's in your court then. You own it. Once you have it, you've got the power play. So get the job, make the close, and then you get to make the choice. I probably shouldn't say that from a recruiting perspective, because I want to have the choice, right? But I would challenge all of y'all, get the choice, and then you can make the right one. So get the job, make the close. That gets missed all the time.
So if you were to land the job, then you could go to further interviews with other people and say, hey, I've got them offering me this position, and use that sort of as leverage.
I think that's always an opportunity, but it's probably not a good idea. Yeah, because people are looking for commitment too. So I have seen people do it, and I mean, it's fair to say that people look for jobs when they have current jobs, right? That happens all the time in the business world, and it's not a bad thing because we're all out to better ourselves. But in certain situations, if you were to go back to an employer and say, hey, look, you offered me $50,000, and I kind of like to work for you, but so-and-so just offered me $65,000, and I don't know, can you do any better than that? I mean, you're negotiating then, and it might work, but in a lot of cases, it probably won't. So make the choice and then stick with it and follow that choice through. Yeah.
The better option is to get 5 jobs. And then make a choice.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think if there's a company that you're really interested in, it's okay to let them know, I have another offer, this is the timeline, but I'm really interested in you guys. Can you work with that timeline? Because if a company's really interested in you, they can sometimes work with you on that. So if it's an informational item, that's one thing, but if it's pitting 2 people against each other, probably not.
I mean, I'll just tell you from experience, and you probably have seen it too, both of you. I mean, I've seen that not work.
Yes.
More than
I've seen
work.
it, not work more than, because then you come off as arrogant.
Yeah.
I mean, you truly do, and you need to.
Big thing.
And the close and the sale, that's key. But that's a fine line between arrogance and, really showing that you are very passionate about wanting that position. You don't want to come off and as arrogant, and all these people want me, and you're going to want me too. But like you said, the balance is
different than confidence.
Which is different than confidence.
The word you use that's dangerous is leverage, right? When you try to leverage someone, that's can be seen as a negative term. What you had mentioned though is very fair. If you're a talented individual, you're likely to get multiple offers, especially in the environment that we're in today. There's some competitiveness, at least in the world of agriculture and the world of sciences. So, and honesty is always the best form of communication, right? Be open and honest, and if there's opportunities, people will tell you what they're thinking. So by all means, if you have an offer and somebody else comes to you, it's probably worth talking to them, but I would not try to leverage.
All right, so back to anybody else have questions you want to jump in? Yeah.
You said to, at the end of the interview, ask for a job. How do you say that? Do you just be like, I want the job, give it to me?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a relationship. An interview is your first opportunity to establish a relationship. And social sciences, right? So sciences around personalities. Understanding the type of personality that you're interacting with would adjust your approach. So there's certain people where they're really turned off if you say, I'm ready, give me the job, I'll start tomorrow. Certain people get really turned off by that. And it's probably different in the world of sciences as well. I've seen that actually work for certain other people. So my advice there is there's soft closes, there's hard closes. When you walk out the door, ensure that the person you're interviewing with understands you have the skills and you would like to work for that organization and you'd like to have that opportunity. It's not necessarily, okay, are we done? Now I want the job.
Yeah.
That's not a close. That's really awkward. But to remind them why you're the right choice, to remind them why you think they're the right choice for you, and then to ask for the opportunity is probably the best way to make a close. But read the person who's interviewing you, because their personality style will accept different types of closes than others. So not everybody's created the same.
So you're going to a job fair, right? So your first sell there would be to get the interview. So you kind of have 2 closes you got to make. So if you're going up to a recruiter at a table, and for Abbvie, when we're at the ACES, there's going to be kind of the HR will be working the line, checking you in, and then there'll be scientists at the table kind of doing the initial interview, right? So we'll go through, we'll ask you some questions, we'll kind of establish that relationship that Ryan was talking about, and then so at that point, we're gonna be seeing, I don't know how many people are gonna be at the ACES job fair. I'll just say hundreds, because that'll be really exciting. So you have to stand out of hundreds, right? And there's good ways and there's bad ways. And so you can say, I would really like the opportunity to interview with you tomorrow, because we'll be doing interviews the next day. There will be calls going out right after that job fair. So make yourself memorable, make it clear you want to interview with Abbvie the next day. You're available at these different times. You'll make it happen. And then in the interview, you can talk about, I really feel I'm a good fit. I'd like the opportunity. There was a question about thank you notes in here. Does it make a difference if you write a thank you note or not? Does it make a difference if you get the job or not?
So yes.
Okay, so really, again, there's an opportunity to interact there. There's an opportunity to establish another relationship. Like, I've had people write me thank you notes, and I've had people not write me thank you notes. And when I don't get a thank you note, I wonder why I'm not getting a thank you note. So, and it's not redundant to do it if you have two interviews to write another thank you note, because that's another opportunity for you to reach out and really, again, close the deal. If you get cards from people, email everybody. Make them personal. Don't do a group email. You can say the same thing to everybody. Don't necessarily expect a reply, but expect it will be read. And in my case, I always remember who emails me with a thank you and who doesn't. And at the end of the day, that might make the difference.
Is an email thank you note sufficient, or does it need to be a paper one?
Emails, in my case, email's fine.
I struggle with email thank you notes. I do. We get them all the time. And if you can make it personable or personal, that's one thing. But if everybody in this room, if you all are competing for one spot and you all send a thank you note via email, you're at a point of parity. You're not at a point of differentiation. So you're all the same then. Again, you got to find a way to stand out. Handwritten notes, again, I have a sales organization, and that's one thing we pride ourselves on. We thank our customers for their business, and we try to do that in a personal way. And email notes isn't something that's really it's outside of our protocol. But
that might be sales and science too. Like, that could be the like, I wouldn't be like, oh, I got a written note from somebody, that just sucks, but then you're also looking for speed too, right? If it's a handwritten note and you can hand deliver it, that's one thing. If it's an email and we're making decisions about a job, if we're interviewing on a Friday and we're getting back to the company on a Monday or Tuesday, you write a handwritten note, it might get there too late. So, you could do both, but consider that too. Consider your window of opportunity. And again, I'm not going to say, like, I wouldn't appreciate a written note, but at the same time, because I agree, like in sales, it's absolutely, when you're closing a deal, when you're establishing a customer relationship, there's a lot more of that goes on.
Yeah, you got to find a way to stand out. So,
Yep.
That would be probably the advice that I would give. Find a way to be differentiated in a positive way.
Yeah. Another question?
Touching back on not locking yourself into an R&D position in an interview, I feel like there's a thin line between sounding like you're open to a lot of positions and there is to you don't really know what you want to do. So how would you get that point across to the interviewer?
I would say if you read a job description, you apply for it, that you intend on fulfilling that need for a certain amount of time. So at our company, at R&D, what we do is we're going to hire you for what I write. So if I need you to come in and do next-gen sequencing of genomes and whatever it is, that's what I expect out of the gate. And then there's always like maybe a 2-year period where if you see something else that comes up, you can move around. Mm-hmm. But I would say, if you're applying for something, be focused and intend on doing that for at least the short term.
So, and I can expand on that. So at Abbvie, the program that they have for interns is, I believe it's junior level, senior level, the summers, gives the interns the opportunity to see different facets of the business. So the understanding is you don't really know, you're not exposed to the different opportunities that could be out there. So you'll go into several different areas, and the intern program, I believe there's 50 or 60 that come in, and they keep that group together. It's all from all different college bases. And you'll get the opportunity to see the different parts of the organization. Then if you're a successful intern, if you're like a junior or in between your sophomore and junior year, you could get asked back between your junior and senior year. If you're successful there's a rotational program. The rotational program is 3 8-month rotations. So you go into different areas of the company, so you get exposed to different areas of the company, and this is for bachelor degree level scientists. So you could be doing, manufacturing support of a filling line. You could be doing R&D support of a new compound. You could support the quality release of certain products or the worldwide quality, like a quality system overview. So you get exposed to the different opportunities with the understanding that you really don't know. So I think that's the difference between the positions. If you're applying for a specific position, then you're applying for that position, and you need to make it clear that you want that job, make that sell. If you're applying for internships, that's where the research comes in handy with a particular company, so you can understand what that job is that they're hiring for. And then you can say, I have this background, I have this love of sciences, I am open to different opportunities utilizing my skill set that I have listed on my resume. Would you like me to go in depth in any particular topic? Or say something like that.
I think you all have talked at one point about researching a company. Can you elaborate on that? What does that mean? How do they research a company? How do they show you that they've researched your company? All the above.
I'll throw it out there. There's so much information available now. It's it's actually very simple. So it'd be pretty well expected in a formal interview setting, in a career fair. Maybe not for everybody. You wouldn't have to research every company, but the folks that you're interested in speaking to at a higher level, I definitely would. But in a formal interview setting, you'll be expected to have an understanding of what the organization is, and at a basic level, that would be information you can capture from a website, information you can capture from a Form 10K, which is a financial statement. So understanding where the organization operates, what their mission, values, goals are, what they do in terms of business on a year-to-year perspective. If they've had any recent press releases, that's normally a big thing that folks can tie into. And you would ask, how do you showcase whether or not you know that? That becomes a little bit more art, because the first thing you walk into an interview, you don't want to tell them, oh yeah, I know everything about you guys. And then here's all that I know. You try to incorporate that into the answers to the questions that you're asked. And when you have an opportunity to use an example of one of their products, perhaps, or one of their active ingredients, or one of their new, something that you found in a press release as an example, how it might help, that's how I would tie it in.
So a real world example of that is when I interviewed at Dow Agro. When I was postdocing here, I worked in secondary metabolism, and we just happened to work on a molecule called glufosinate. And I was interviewing, and things about herbicides had come up, and so it just so happened that sometimes they can be very smooth transitions, and you don't want to force it, and then just like Ryan said, so you just want to be able to spot where that's viable.
For Abbvie, there's information about the internships and the rotational programs on the corporate website. So if you go to abbvie.com, they'll have information about the different opportunities for undergraduate students. I echo, you can find out a lot about the company. Abbvie makes Humira, which is the #1 drug in the world right now. If you don't know that going into an interview, that might be a bit of an oversight on your part. But what do you know about it? What type of compound is it? You can, Google the company and come up with all the different drugs. A lot of goodwill gestures. There's a combo HIV drug product that Abbvie gives away for free in Africa. So, you can understand that part too. And it might come up, it might not. So it's kind of like you study for a test. Not all of it's going to be on the test, but you like to be prepared if it is. And if it comes up, if you have the opportunity to slide it in, it's nice, because again, that will differentiate you. That will make you stand out, because it makes it look like you really took the time to understand the interview you're going into.
So beyond the website, sounds like look at press releases, read where you guys are written about, and so forth.
Google works great, yeah.
So are there questions that you ask in every interview? And what would those be?
I'm not going to show your hand.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. I ask a lot of teamwork questions. I want to know how people are going to operate in a team. I also look for so to speak towards the arrogance thing, again, that's a big thing. Everyone comes out, especially at the levels we interview, they're an expert in something. So I look at how humble you can be and realize how much you can still learn, because you're going to learn a lot, and it's so different in industry. So I look for that, and how well you're going to be able to operate in a team, interpersonal skills, and ability to network. Because the faster you network, as soon as you get a job, the faster you're going to be recognized and able to get a good career trajectory.
We have basic principles that we interview by. So there's buckets of, call them skill sets that we're looking for. Innovative thinking, teamwork, value creation, and I imagine most companies have, I'll call them buckets of skill types that they're looking for. When I'm interviewing a particular candidate though, I look very closely at your resume and I'll ask behavioral based questions based upon what's on your resume. So when you put it on your resume, be prepared for a question about it and be prepared to speak detailed. Sometimes resumes can be an area where people aren't always so honest. That's a really big mistake.
Yes.
Because you will get asked questions there. So if somebody tells me that they were a leader of a club and that's on their resume, I'll ask them a question. Tell me about a time that you led a team through a very difficult situation, and I want to know what the situation was and what steps you created or put in place to resolve it and what the outcome was. So you'll get asked, and a lot of companies do it now, it's all behavioral based. It's not, can you work on a team? It's tell me about a time when you did, what you did, and what was accomplished. Because we'll be searching for, can they really do it? Do they have the critical thinking skills and so forth?
There's a system called the STAR-based system, situation, task, action, result. That's something, if you're not familiar with it going into an interview, it's a nice way to formulate your answers. Specifically, you could be very concise, and that, I think if you just Google STAR interview system, it'll kind of give you examples of how you can kind of elaborate on the answer to the question he just asked very nicely, succinctly. When I'm interviewing, I'm looking for the answers to questions succinctly. Own your resume. I will, especially technical, like I'll read what you have in your background and where you were, whatever, but if you've got a skills section, I love the skills section. It's my favorite part of a resume because I'll start to hone in on the skills. And if you get someone with a background in what you put on your resume, be prepared to talk to what you have on your resume. And also, be honest. If it's something that you did in a classroom setting, that's fine. You know, if you can put it under like coursework, you know, there's a way to put it on there that you've gotten exposure to it versus something that you maybe did independent in a lab.
That's a good point. We were talking about it earlier. One of the biggest things that we catch is people put things down, and it's like, you know, I did X-ray crystallography, and then I'll start asking about it, and it turns out it was like, well, I just submitted a sample to a collaborator at a different institute, and so that is completely different. So if you did it, then make sure that's clear.
So that kind of leads me to differences for graduate students versus undergraduate. Do you ask different questions? Do you ask the behavioral questions still? How does the interview differ, and how do your expectations differ for graduate students versus undergrads?
Yeah, I mean, graduate, I mean, we have a different technical expectation, the expertise level.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just got to be clear. I mean, if we see a resume that has, I have a PhD, I have a postdoc in these areas, and it's from, you know, accredited institute, I'm not going to sit there and grill on these types of skills, because I believe that is after a 6-year PhD or 5-year PhD and a 2-year postdoc that you're astute in those things. So I focus on some of the things I talk about more. But I haven't interviewed many bachelor level.
I think the difference is, at least at Abbvie, what I've seen is graduate level degrees tend to be more specific positions. So you're going in with a specific position in mind. So it's a little bit, I won't say easier, it's different, right? Because the focus is different. Whereas a bachelor coming in, the expectation is, I know you don't necessarily, unless you've done extensive internships, you haven't worked in a pharmaceutical or a company environment. So my expectation of the knowledge that you might have is not as focused on the applied. So it's taking your coursework, it's understanding what you've gotten from your coursework. I love undergraduate research opportunities. If you're not working in a lab and you want to work somewhere in sciences, walk into a lab and offer to wash the dishes for free for a couple hours a week. No one's going to turn you down. You know, that's what I did. That's what I wound up doing. Freshman, first semester, I found a professor, Dr. Gerald. He hired me as a dishwasher. You know, it was like she showed up for free for a while, then we'll pay her. Then all of a sudden I'm in the lab, so I'm talking to the grad students. So then I'm helping the grad student. Then all of a sudden I'm working in coursework, and then I'm doing a senior thesis, and now I'm on a paper, right? So you've got 4 years of opportunity, and so if you want to wind up in industry, that's what's going to differentiate you from someone else, is that you were in a lab. You're going to get then the opportunities to apply some of the things you're learning in your coursework.
I'll speak specifically to what the commercial unit of Dow AgroSciences does. So whether it's a master's in communication, ag econ, or an undergrad in a similar type degree, most of the folks that we hire come into what we call a sales trainee program, where they're given trainee opportunities before putting into a sales territory, and then on to additional roles in the commercial business. We interview master's candidates and undergraduate candidates very much the same. They'll get behavioral-based questions. They'll get asked very similar types of questions. We'll be looking for the same type of experiences and skills. The challenge I would have is if you're an undergrad, know your competition, because you will be interviewing against many graduate level or graduate degrees out there. So folks who might have a little bit more maturity than you already, who might have more experiences through internships. So know your competition. You got to be that much better than them, because from a commercial element, we'll treat you very much the same.
So what questions should they not ask you?
I don't deal with salary at all.
Yeah, at the ends of our interviews, commercial's probably the same, but there's a HR representative who discusses money and benefits, so we don't deal with that. Yeah, I mean, at the science level.
That's not me, yeah.
We don't address those things, and we would immediately divert those questions. I'm sure
I wouldn't flag you for it, though, if someone,
No.
I just would be like, I don't know, not me, next up.
Similar comments there. The finance piece is extremely important, right? Because it's one of the primary reasons why you do what you do. Mm-hmm. But you got to find the right person to ask it to, and it's typically not one of the 5 round robin interviews you might go through in a period. But it's important information. Most people won't penalize you for it unless they see you come off in an arrogant way and your questions asked in an interesting way. Don't ask about how many days am I going to get off? What do I do about sick time? Don't lead people down the path of my work ethic is not so good. I had an individual in an internship experience ask me, do I get vacation as an intern? I said, okay, you're going to be with us for 3 months, so you get 12 weeks. My next question was, what do you need vacation for? Well, I just think, and he had a very specific reason. I won't say why. And that was a really bad question to ask, because he didn't get chose for the opportunity. But know when to ask him, but don't ask about those types of questions that lead to whether or not you're going to have strong work ethic. Don't erode everything you tried to build early on.
So what questions should they be asking you? What impresses you when you hear a student ask a particular question? What kind of question would that be?
I like it when they say, if I have the opportunity to work for you, what kind of job would I expect to have? Or what kind of, what would a day look like working under you? Or something like that, more specifically. Because you're interviewing for a job and there's a bunch of skill sets. So what does someone who's interviewing for this position do on a daily basis? What could I expect to be doing? because that shows you're thinking about it. And then, in my mind, I'm picturing you working for me in that role, right? So you're establishing that connection. So all of a sudden, if I'm telling you what you're going to do when you're working for me, wow, maybe I should just hire you, you know, like, hey, that could work.
Ask questions about why they're going to be successful. So ask the interviewer, why do you believe that the organization you're working for, whatever it is going to be successful? Where does your organization plan to be in 5 to 10 years, and how are you going to get there? Questions about describe to me what the 5 must-have skills are for a successful whatever you're interviewing. Find out exactly what they're looking for. And a lot of people wait to ask questions till the very end. And I'm not sure what your all's feedback is, but ask questions ongoing. That's
Conversation.
That's a question I would try to have early on. Define to me, Ryan, you're hiring for a sales position. In Dow AgroSciences, what makes a great sales representative in your experience? What are those skills? Because if I tell you, I just showed you my hand, and I will tell you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you can play off of that. So those are some of the better questions, right? Because they're leading you to the close.
I like career questions too. I like people who are thinking forward. I mean, I know you need to be focused on getting this job and like displaying what you have to offer, but I like people who are thinking about, when you ask forward-thinking questions in terms of careers, it makes me feel like you're invested. So that's a big thing.
Make it a conversation. We know, I remember I was nervous. You know, you're going to be nervous. You know, we know you're nervous. We know you want the job, but make it turn it into a conversation, because then you're memorable. Then we're invested in your success, right? And we want you to succeed. And so then if you have a champion, right? That's what you're trying to turn us into, is a champion for you. You want me the day after the interview at the interview table saying, we gotta hire this person, you know, we need this person, you know, and you want me fighting with the other person who's saying, no, we need this person. I'm like, no, we need this person because this person has said this to me or established this. That's what you want. And that goes back to sealing the deal and building that relationship in a very short period of time.
Well, you said to turn it into a conversation. Which way do you normally see people make mistakes? Do they tend to talk too much and make it sort of a presentation, or do they not talk enough and kind of expect the interviewers to give the presentation, I suppose? Or do you see some of both?
You're looking at me, so I'll answer. It can go either way, right? It's going to depend on your individual personality. I'm a talkative person. I will tend to talk. And if you're more introverted about it, you know, maybe you're not selling yourself as much. So you don't necessarily want the person who's doing the interviewing to talk the whole time. You want them to kind of ask the question and have you respond. And then if you ask a question, then you can let the interviewer respond. So that's what I mean by a conversation. So it shouldn't just be rapid fire, like tell me about this situation, now tell me about this, now tell me about this on your resume. If that's happening, you can take the opportunity to kind of insert at the end of a response to an interviewer's question, your question. Right? So it's kind of hard because you're multitasking in your interview, right? You're answering the question and then you're thinking, okay, how can I insert that I researched this company and I want to understand what I'm doing, and it's a game. You're playing a game. It's like a dance. So a balance is fine. I don't mark people off if they do all the talking. If I wind up doing more talking, it's because that you haven't answered the question, as you haven't taken the opportunity I've given you. Maybe I give you a question and you give me a one-sentence answer and then sit back. Like that maybe is not the best approach.
I'll just piggyback on that would be my comment as well. And it depends. Your interviewers are all going to have different styles. If you're interviewing with the three of us, I guarantee the experience, even if we ask the exact same questions, will be extremely different. And that is 100% okay. There are interviewers who are going to drill you with questions because that's what they think determines the best candidate and how they select the best person for their position. Where I've seen people go astray in cases is where the interviewer allows them the opportunity to pick up a clue so to speak, and ask a question or further elaborate, and they miss that opportunity, be cautious of that or be cognizant of that, because you've just missed a chance to further tell a story. And if I'm going to ask another question, it's going to be really hard to get me back there. So there have been times when we've completed interviews before where we'll be debriefing, and quite literally, you should understand, in a debrief with a larger organization, there'll be 6 to 10 to 15 people around a table, depending upon how many people you interviewed that day, and you will literally argue for who we want to choose. If we had 30 people, we'll choose 10, we choose 5, and we'll argue over who we believe is the right person. But I've seen cases where I asked a lot of questions and I didn't feel like there was passion, and
Passion's big.
they're just kind of going through the damn motions. And their resume looked great. I remember a particular candidate. Her resume was awesome. Her experience was great, but she was kind of going through the motion. It was a complete turnoff. And so other interviewers for that individual, I remember, did have good experiences, but it was something that I still remember to this day, and it was years ago. So find the opportunities to make it a conversation. Read the personality types that you're interviewing with.
It's not a stretch like American Idol, where they're like, if you watch it and they've got those people and they're like, that person's got to get in. No, that person's got to get in. That's kind of what it's like. I mean, it is truly when you have conversations.
We've had people walk out of the discussions after the interviews are normally a lot more hostile than the interviews ever are.
Yeah.
Especially in the commercial environment, we get people yelling. It's quite entertaining. So make the job easy on us. That's my plea to you. And stand out a bunch, and then it's easy.
Then you just say that's the person.
And everyone agrees.
What kind of quality do you really look into? Do you say what kind of quality are more important for you to make the decisions? So,
I mean, 99% is all the same. I mean, there could be some, language, but that's it. I mean, as long as you have the right skills, and like for most of mine are graduate level. So I'm looking at publications. I'm looking at skill sets, technical skills, but usually it doesn't play that much of a role.
You can get that from maybe the job description as well. So sometimes it'll say, do you require sponsorship to work in the United States? So that would be a question that you could ask is, do you offer sponsorship? So you can get it that way. But in terms of the actual questions in the interview, it would be the same.
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess it would be, how often do you guys do panel versus individual interviews? And you made a really good suggestion that it kind of turned into a conversation. Do you have advice on how to best approach a panel interview?
Yeah, we usually try to get a good diversity. I mean, there are some one-on-one, but most of ours are like 3. Yeah, 3 to 5 sometimes, mostly 3. And so it's, again, reading the room. Everyone in that room is going to have a different experience, and you try to tie into all of them.
When I interviewed out of grad school for my first position, I was asked to give a presentation. So I had my resume at the Career Center, so points for the Career Center. And Abbott actually pulled my resume and cold called me out of the blue, and I had an interview, on-campus interview. And then out of that interview, then I had to go up and I had to give a presentation. So it was a mix of a one-on-one, and then there was a room with 10 to 15 people asking questions as well. So you kind of have to be prepared for both instances. At a graduate level, it's kind of like your thesis. You're kind of more or less giving a thesis presentation. You're prepared to answer any questions technically on anything, and then your one-on-ones tend to be the behavioral. In a panel, I would treat it the same way. You kind of, if you're asking a question, you ask it of the panel. If someone asks you a question, you can address your answer to the individual who asked the question, but then also address the group.
And at a graduate level, get a lot of rest the night before, because it's an all-day process. And you're going to get the same questions, and it's going to get annoying, and you're going to be tired. And you're going to give a talk. You're going to give an hour seminar.
And a lunch. You'll probably have a lunch.
You'll go to lunch. And you might go to dinner. I mean, it's going to be a long day. And that is key, because if you can execute and control your patience level, it's huge, because it's very frustrating.
Yeah, because you may be interviewing with someone for the 8th time, but that's the first time they've seen you. So you got to keep that in mind too, right? You know, it's a long day, and if you start at 8 a.m., right, and you've got someone at 4, and you've been going the whole day, you're on the whole day. But at that 4 o'clock interview, that might be, your 4 o'clock might be the VP or the director. You know, that might be the person who like authorized the position, so they've got, you know, a serious stake in it. So
I would say from a commercial perspective, we do what we call panel interviewing, but it's 5 people for 5 30-minute one-on-one sessions in most cases, and we would consider that a panel, as opposed to they do presentations. A lot of times, folks we ask to present on a particular topic, they've interviewed with us or interned with us in the past. But for most of our positions, we're interviewing one-on-one, and then the group of interviewers goes behind the curtain to make a decision. That's typical because we do a lot of behavioral-based stuff. We're looking for specific skill sets in a one-on-one interaction in most cases. The advice I would give is if you get an opportunity and you get a phone call and you wind up on someone's corporate campus, which many of you probably will, and you've got an interview in the morning or a presentation in the morning and interviews through the day, every single person you interact with, you need to treat them like the most important person of the day.
Yep.
Because I'm not sure how everyone does it, but we ask everybody. When somebody comes into our campus, we're looking for a culture fit, right? You got to be able to live and work successfully within the environment that we put you in. So we're looking for culture fit, and we will ask everybody, to the person at the receptionist desk, to the people in the lunch line if we get the opportunity. We'll ask everybody on their feedback on you. Do you remember this person? Or everybody, who they go to dinner with, and you never know. You never know who's walking down the hallway either. Our CEO Antonio Galendez is notable for showing up in certain areas, and most people would not have any idea what he looks like, but he carries the biggest stick in the house. And if he says that's the guy, that's the guy. If he says that's not the guy, that's not the guy or the gal. So treat everyone as if they are the most important person you'll see all day.
The other thing that I did during my interview was, whether it's one-on-one or panels, is I actually, because most of them, you know, they're going to be scientists, at least I did, I looked up every one of their names.
yes.
PubMed, whatever it was, to see what they worked on in the past. I almost knew their history. I mean, their academic careers. So that's
That's a good tip.
it
And
helps.
that's again, it's like you're going into a football game, right? Know your opponent, right? You want to win. You want to close the deal. You want to establish that relationship. You want to know, if you know, right, that if you Google me in PubMed, you're going to see a whole bunch of papers that I did on gene regulation, right? Read the papers, then all of a sudden you can be asking me techniques, or you can insert that in. If you go down a direction where I'm asking you about protein biochemistry, you can all of a sudden shock me and be like, well, in my research I noticed you had a JBAC-T paper and you did this research in sialic acid catabolism, and I was really curious, could you explain this to me? And, or I don't know, make it up, and that would really shock me and stand out, right? If you know the people who are interviewing you, if you get your list the night before, because usually we publish the list of like who you're going to be meeting.
But I would say even there, folded in gradually.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to sound like a stalker either.
Right.
You did this, you did that.
No, but you know what? Like, at least it's a balance, because not everybody would do that.
Right.
Yeah, don't be a stalker.
So what do you want to see students wearing to interviews, and what other things should they bring with them to interviews?
Professional attire, I mean, we interview typically in professional attire. Some folks are allowed to do so in business casual, but it's always better to be overdressed than underdressed.
Yes.
You're going to err on the side. So I tend to, gentlemen in a suit, ladies in a pantsuit, whatever that might be. But professional attire, I always bring extra copies of your resume. More than likely they'll have them, but bring them and put them on resume paper. So make the extra effort. If you have project work that you've completed in the past that's in binders, or examples of prior work, prior experiences, bring that. You might not use it, but it is, again, a tool that you can reference to, or a resource that you can showcase to display to an individual, okay, they've got tangible things that they've completed before. So bring that. I wouldn't bring a briefcase. Bring your top items and find a way to work them into the conversation. That'd be the other thing. I saw an individual at a time who had interned with BASF, and he had done a fantastic business case analysis on a district that they actually ended up folding. So they utilized this individual's work, I found out later. Super candidate. We hired him anyway, but he missed that opportunity to utilize his book of information and at least showcase it to us in a way that said, here's what I've done, and here's what it delivered. He told us, yeah, I've got some work here, but he never used it, and he missed that. So if you go through all the steps of getting the right stuff there, use it when the time's right.
Depending on how extensive your research is you've done, or from the science side, undergraduate research, graduate research, a research summary that accompanies your resume is very important. Mm-hmm. We look for that.
I think too, the level of what you're interviewing for, don't come in with a 3-page resume if you're coming out of undergrad, if it's not like solid stuff. I'd say for women coming through, watch your makeup, right? You're not going to a club or you're not going out, so you want to you don't want to stand out in the wrong way, with your hair, your hair in too drastic a style. You want to, and sometimes you'll get that from the company you're interviewing. I'll say the more California-based companies maybe have a more business casual environment to them. Some companies you might be able to wear flip-flops and jeans to work, but don't do that during an interview. During an interview, you're coming in, you want to be as professionally polished as you can. You're kind of showing, it's kind of like meet the parents. You're kind of meeting, you're putting your best image forward.
So what happens if something goes wrong? What if you're late? What if something goes wrong? How do you handle that? How should they handle it?
Make it funny.
Okay.
It happened to me here. I got my first phone interview, and I was in, I don't know what building it was. I just found an open classroom, and no one was in there. And I went in there, and they're asking me all these questions, and the fire alarm goes off. And so I was I just made it humorous. I think that shows how you can handle things, and it's all you just roll with it.
Adaptability is a big core competency. I mean, people call it buckets or whatever. We have core competencies, and you've got to be adaptable. If you're late, typically you're going to have the contact information of a recruiter and call them as soon as you know you're going to be late, because sometimes someone's early, right? And so that you take that person who's early and you slide them in. If you've made a really good impression at a job fair and you're memorable, they'll work you in. Some cases that might be the recruiter stays late. If that's the case, thank them profusely. But you guys are students. You've got classes. We've already discussed when we're doing intern interviews, okay, how are we going to work around student schedules? Okay, it'll be Fridays, so different classes might have different opportunities to go in between classes, and what if there's exams? I mean, so I think when you're interviewing on campus, you're very aware that people are trying to juggle this interview in between classes. So just make sure you know where you're supposed to be when, and if something goes wrong. And you can ask that question when you get a call to do an interview. You can actually be proactive and say, should something come up, what's the best number for me to call? I mean, that's just right there. Because that's, again, you're making yourself stand out because you're thinking ahead. You're being proactive.
Back to your first question earlier. No aftershave and no perfume, no
that's
cologne.
good too.
I mean, that's kind of interviewing 101, but you'd be shocked how many people miss that, and it can offend certain folks. So don't do that. I think you hit on it. If you're going to be late, call, and the best advice is don't be late.
Yeah.
Find a way not to be late. Be extra early.
I'm glad you said that.
Don't be
I was
late.
trying to figure out the nice way to say that.
Anything else you want to add, or last pearls of wisdom for the group?
I just reiterate, just do your research. I mean, you have to, it's going to be nerve-wracking. Just remain calm. Understand that it's, depending on what level it's at, it can be very tiring, and just do your best, and don't try to act like something you're not either. Just be very forward and honest.
Relax. I said it before. I expect you to be nervous, right? I expect you want the job. but try to make the best impression on me and truly communicate you want the job, and be honest on your resume, you know, and own what's on your resume. I mean, that I can't stress that enough. Just make sure that if you put something on your resume, you're prepared to talk to it.
Be focused. Right? I don't know how many people are going to have the College of Aces or any other career fair you go to, but take your destiny into your own hands. So find the 10 companies you want to work for that align to what you want to do, what you want to be as a person, what you want to accomplish in your career, and seek them out and find them and show them why you're the right person. So be laser focused in your efforts there, and then have fun. Work is, if it's not fun, you're going to spend 60 years of your life working, right? But if you enjoy it, the odds are most of your days are going to be a good time. So people will look for that. There's likability factors, and that's something we're interested in. We want people to enjoy working, so they do a great job. Happy people are successful people in most cases. So
Yeah, we don't want
have
someone
fun
who
in
just
this.
punches a time clock.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, be passionate, have fun, and choose who you want to work for. Don't let them choose you.